What's up, guys? We are digging back into the spider robot wave. I still don't know how to pronounce this thing. We're digging into that wave. We're going to take a look at two figures today. We've got Cloak and we've got Dagger because, I mean, they go together. There's no way I can't do these together. So these guys are in our standard box. Pretty standard stuff here. We've got the windows, we've got our figures in there, we've got the Cloak and Dagger logo down there on the bottom. We have got product shots on the back with our lineup and our Build-A-Figures. So let's pull these guys out. Take a look. All right, guys, here they are out of the package. We've got Cloak and we've got Dagger, so we're going to do both figures in the same review. I'm going to talk about them each individually, and then we'll talk about how they kind of mesh together. So we're going to start things off and take a look at Dagger, and then we will come back to Cloak. All right, now we're going to take a look at Dagger's articulation first, and that's going to be basically probably exactly what you think it's going to be, because she is a standard Marvel Legends female. Head can swivel, but of course she's got a full head of hair, so it's going to hit her shoulders. She cannot really look up. She can look down pretty decent. Arms can go out. They can rotate. No bicep swivel. Single jointed elbow. You get about 90 degrees. And then we've got hinged and rotating wrists, and they are both horizontal side-to-side hinges. The diaphragm joint offers a little bit of rotation, some side-to-side action. She can go backwards and forwards, but only slightly. It's pretty limited, all things considered. Legs go out only that far. They kick forward pretty high. We go backwards just a smidge, thigh cut, double jointed knees, and then we have got a forward-facing pin for rocker as well as a hinge down there. So she is, you know, pretty standard boilerplate Marvel Legends female, but she isn't the most agile or mobile of figure, and that's kind of a downside. You know, I'm not exactly happy with some of the upper torso limitations as well as limitations surrounding the head, but she's not entirely bad. She's just limited in a general sense. Now, in the same way that she is rather limited with articulation and basic in that regard, she's pretty basic in terms of overall figure design too. So we've got just a basic standard Marvel Legends female, so a very slender frame, nothing to write home about here, and the majority of the figure is cast in white plastic. You know, there's not a whole lot to talk about in that regard. So most of her is just a stark white figure. We do have flesh tones for the hands, but they've got paint applications for the rest of her outfit that kind of goes down in between her fingers, and it's okay. It's thinly applied. I would have rather seen more paint on the hands. The design on her chest on the actual suit itself is definitely a little bit of an artistic license from the norm. She's usually more revealing, and I can understand why they didn't go that route, but it's definitely a little too basic. I think they should have done a little more to accentuate the design on her chest and abdomen area. So yeah, it's just kind of boring and basic, and that's really where this figure kind of falls flat, is from the neck down. Now, I think the head sculpt in general is pretty well done. I'm okay with it. I like the you know, kind of crescent moon design on her face, and that looks good. Everything's cleanly applied. We've got some pearlescent style lipstick going on. Eyes are clean, eyebrows are clean. Everything's very straight. And then I do like the hair sculpt. I think it's nice. It's kind of a dirty blonde, so we've got a lot of kind of wash in there too to bring it out. So I do like the face and I do like the head sculpt, but the body in general is leaving something to be desired. Now, in terms of accessories for Dagger here, we've got one. This is kind of her light dagger throwing kind of thing, so you can kind of make it out to be that she's throwing 3 light daggers out of her hand, and this guy just kind of clips onto her wrist, so it's pretty standard Marvel Legends stuff. I do like the design. You know, I get what they're going for here. I think this is better than having her actually hold some sort of light dagger, and both of her hands are sculpted in such a way that you could use this on either side. I think it works a little better on her right. Personally, I just kind of like that hand, but this one would work fine as well. It's a pearlescent, slightly transparent plastic. I like the design. You know, I originally thought this was going to be used in some fashion, in classic Hasbro fashion, for a Gambit design, like throwing cards, but they have surprised us at San Diego and showed us that's not the case. So this is, I believe, still unique to her, at least for now. So it fits the character, and I think it helps accentuate her as a figure and bring her up a little bit, because like I said, she is so basic, and I find her to be very basic, but this helps make her a little bit more dynamic in that regard. And now we move on to Cloak. So this is a figure that I was pretty interested in, just because I do have a fondness in some way for these two particular characters, but I've always thought Cloak was the cooler of the two. And, you know, his whole deal is that he's basically a void inside of the cloak. for the most part, without getting too crazy in detail on it. So that's kind of where this figure falls a little flat, unfortunately, because he is, of course, a body underneath there. And I understand Hasbro's done a few things to kind of play up the idea that he's just a dark void inside of this cloak. So the body itself is entirely black, but it's actually transparent. The body is kind of a translucent plastic. It's really hard to show that, but if you hold it up to a light source, you'll be able to see right through it. It's kind of a smoky blue color, and the cloak is actually transparent as well. All of these darker lines, we got the alternating blue and the dark lines are actually translucent as well, similar to the body. So I do actually like that. I think that's pretty cool. I like that the cloak does come apart. It clasps on at his at this clasp here on his chest, and it's got some paint on it, a little silver buckle. I'm not even going to go through articulation on this guy. He's standard Marvel Legends stuff, but he's basically hindered entirely by the cloak. You can't really do a whole lot with them. You know, this cloak is really rigid plastic. It's basically set in this particular pose, and that's how you're going to do. You can kind of fit Dagger inside of it, because you know she's always popping out and jumping into battle out of him, because you know he transports people as well. So we've got, for the most part, just kind of a standard thing going on here. He's really static. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I would have loved to have been able to, however, use this cloak in a more dynamic fashion, like have it billowing open to where maybe he's pushing it outwards and you can have Dagger kind of hunkered down in there. But that's not really going to happen. And he is, you know, for the most part, you're just going to move his arms out, and the more you move them, the more you're going to pop that cloak apart too. So there's not a great deal you can do there. You could, however, if you wanted, pop the head off and then just set it on top of the cloak so it looks like it's just kind of floating there. But that's, I don't know if anybody's really going to do that. It doesn't actually attach anywhere, because the head and the cloak are attached. So the hood of the cloak is attached to the top of the head. Now, as far as that face sculpt goes, I'm actually really happy with it. It looks really, really nice. I dig the, you know, the overall hooded design. It still meshes with the transparent lines that they've got on there. He's got the nice beard. He's got those pupilless eyes, which I always like. They always kind of indicate when someone's using a power, and it looks good. It sits well on this, on the body, and it sits well over top of the cloak and sort of frames the whole package up. So he does look really good. He's just not very dynamic. And, you know, that's kind of a personal preference thing of whether you want him to be standing there kind of like a dark void, or if you want him to be able to kind of move his arms out and kind of billow that cloak out somewhat, which is what I would have liked, but ultimately is just not what we were given. So he's a standard Marvel Legends style body that is really, really hindered by articulation, just because of the fact that he's got this heavy, rigid kind of plastic cloak around him. But in general, I do like the way he looks. Don't get me wrong there. I think he looks good. I like the design. I like what they did with the various uses of translucent plastic. He's just, in the same way that Dagger's kind of basic as a figure, he's really basic because he's just so static, and he doesn't really have a lot of dynamic movement you can perform because of the constraints of that cloak. So at the end of the day, I've got some likes and I've got some dislikes here. Definitely. We've got a pretty decent figure on Dagger's side. She is basic, but she looks the part. I do think that she is pretty basic on articulation and paint, however, but I do like her from the neck up, and I really like her accessory. As far as Cloak goes, he is about as basic as it gets, unfortunately. You can't really do a great deal with him, and that's really my big downside for him. He does look cool, and that's where he shines for me, is in the looks department. I like the translucence in the body. I like the translucent plastics used in the cape. I think it looks very nice. And then I do like the head sculpt, so he looks good and they look good together, but for the most part they are still on the basic side of the spectrum, and honestly you can't do much with Cloak. He's really just a brick that's going to look imposing with Dagger standing next to him. So that's going to do it for this look at the Marvel Legends Cloak and Dagger figures from Hasbro. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.